What's up guys, Chen here. Welcome to another episode of Hoonigan Autofocus. We're actually out here at Mo Party, which is a Holly event in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And today we're just kind of driving around featuring some cars like I did at LS Fest a couple years ago. But this car that we're featuring today, from the outside it looks pretty stock. The driver and the builder, Geoff Turk, is here. This is not really stock, is it?
Well, it's supposed to look that way, but it's far from stock. I mean, it starts out as a factory-built drag racing car called a Mopar Dodge Challenger drag pack. This one has to be a 2015. About ready to come out with the 2021. That's going to be really exciting. But this is a 2015 model, and it's got a supercharged engine akin to the Hellcats and the Hellcat Red Eyes, but tuned up for drag racing. And then the back suspensions, instead of an independent rear suspension, it's kind of a 4-link-ish, like factory shootout stock type suspension. But these cars compete on 9-inch tires, and they get a lot done with about 1,300 horsepower 9-inch tires.
Okay, so from the outside, first of all, it's called Blackbird, so it's got to be fast.
Yeah, that was its intent, was, the world's fastest airplane, and I was always an airplane kind of guy, and my eyesight kind of went to crap, and I couldn't fly planes. So my brother was a drag racer and had this old 66 Pontiac Tim. He's like, teach me how to make cars go fast. I can't go fast in the air. So anyway, later in life, when I built this car, I named it after the fastest plane, hopefully to make it the fastest car. And hey, it kind of worked. For a while, it was the fastest drag pack. So, the namesake kind of worked.
So these cars actually have a special place in my heart because I actually had a chance to shoot the Demon. Leah Pruitt actually drove it and broke the, I think, street car record. Yep. Street tire record with the skinnies. And it's so crazy to me that you could buy that car from the dealership. So tell us a little bit about the class that you're actually racing in. So Leah actually drives that class too?
Oh, she does. In fact, she won the championship in the NHRA version of that class in 2018. I won the championship in the NMCA. The two sanctioning bodies that race these cars in drag racing are the NHRA and the NMCA. In NHRA, they call it the Factory Showdown, and NMCA, they call it the Factory Supercars. In fact, the Holly EFI Factory Supercars. So we ran both the cars in both classes. Of course, her presence in NHRA, her focus was in NHRA, my focus was a little more NMCA, and in 2018 we both won championships. I won in NMCA, she won over in NHRA. So she was a great teammate, one of the best race car drivers I've ever worked with, incredibly coachable, incredibly talented, knows her stuff, gets it done, man. You can always count on Leah as part of the team in any regard, but as a driver, just badass. And I was just really blessed to work with her and the whole team at DSR. We started out as a team of a couple Mopar engineers and myself helping her with that car. Actually, I drove that car a couple times in testing and brought it out at the US Nationals in 2017. Then it later became a DSR sponsored effort, and Mark Powick joined the DSR stable and they ran both those cars. But in an odd twist, and Leah might get a kick out of this, both the team guys that were really supporting the car and helping her back in the days, they both work at Holly now. In fact, we just hired the second one. So there's a guy named Eric Cunningham who's got a Hellcat here that he got out of a salvage yard and turned into a 10-second street strip car. And the other guy named Ben Reddy, they both now work at Holly. So
and you work at Holly too.
I work at Holly too. So anyway, so the whole original factory shootout drag pack team, at least the hardcore guys who were at the track, they all work at Holly now. Except Leah. Maybe we ought to give Leah a job.
Maybe. So tell us.
I think she's got a pretty good job.
What does this normally compete against in the class?
Well, in the factory showdown class, this competes against the other factory-built drag cars, which are the Ford Mustang Cobra Jet and the Chevrolet Copo Camaro, which similarly have about these 350 cubic inch small block engines. In the case of the Ford, it's a Coyote. In the case of the Copo, it's an LS motor, and they have different superchargers than this one did in competition, and those guys all compete against each other. And the great exciting news that in 2021, there's going to be a 2021 drag pack that's going to actually have this fantastic Generation 5 Whipple 3-liter supercharger on it, which will make it incredibly competitive. And as well, the car is much improved over this 2015 model. And I'm really anxious to see those Mopar guys get back out there in action with those 2021 drag packs. And of course, it's going to have a Holley control system and race pack stuff on it, so it couldn't be better than that. It's going to be a badass deal, and I'm hopeful that Lee will get to drive one of those.
Okay, so I admit it. I'm a drag racing dummy. I get to shoot it every now and then. I get to follow Leah. I get to shoot Top Fuel and Funny Car. I've been to March Meet and Hot Rod Reunion many times, but it's not something that I follow all the time. So it's, in essence, this is kind of similar to like you could buy a factory race car from Porsche.
Yes, you can, right.
That
Or Ferrari.
Right, or Ferrari or Toyota even,
Right.
where it's not street legal,
Right.
but it has all the safety equipment, it has the fit and finish
Exactly.
like a factory car, but it's a race car,
Exactly.
right? And then so the big three pretty much do that.
That's right.
For drag racing.
Yeah, and it's been going on for, I think, factory shootout, factory showdown, heads up racing of some sort or another has been going on for 10 or 15 years with these three cars doing battle. It's just intensified every year. Last year, the Skillmans, Bill Skillman and Drew Skillman, his son, who used to be a pro stock driver of great notoriety and talent, they won both championships in Cobra jets. And so it's gotten increasingly competitive, increasingly tough, as you could call Leah and Mark Palak now, and now Mark Palak, who's an ex-pro stock driver, drives one of these also, and tell them. But you know, it's a lot of car. It's a 3,600 pound car. In competition, they run on a 9-inch tire, which is not a very wide tire. I mean, a tiny tire, tons of weight and tons of power. These cars actually make more power than pro stock cars now, which are, you know, a much lighter aerodynamic car. These are not aerodynamic. They have stock suspensions in them for the most part, and they're a handful to drive, and they're a blast to drive, and you know, it's a good time. But I done it, and because Holley EFI sponsors the factory supercar class, I needed to do something else. So what we've done with this car now is update it and improve it to move it up a class in a class called Extreme Street or Ultra Street, where it runs a tire called an X275, which has become quite popular. It's a street radial, although it's pretty much a race tire disguised as a street tire. And you run this class where power adders and more power are legal and capable. So this car should pick up a bunch and handily outrun its old self with this much new and improved engine in it, moving from about 1,300 horsepower to 1,700 plus horsepower, and moving from 3,600 pounds down as low as I can get it, probably around 34, 33, although I could get all the way down to 3,200 if I could lose some weight, but that's not gonna happen.
So, and that's kind of one of the things that really surprised me when we were pulling out here for me to actually shoot it. Seriously, looking from the outside, it looks like a normal car. I mean, I could imagine seeing it with livery and all in a supermarket parking lot, but when you started it, you cleared the area. Like, oh my God, it's loud. I cannot believe how loud this thing is. 1,700 horsepower.
Yeah, well, that's what we tell people.
What's your fastest pass in this car?
Well, in this car, about 780s, but with that, it ran 780s with 1,300 and some horsepower in it, and weighing about 200 or 300 more pounds. So it now has 400 or 500 horsepower more and will weigh 200 to 300 pounds less. So that would be hopefully low sevens. You know, if we can tune it up a little more and even lighten it, you know, we could. I don't know if we can get it down in the 6s or not, but the class I'm going to run it actually runs on an 1/8 mile, so it'll move it from like 5 seconds in an 1/8 mile, which is like one block at 140, to probably more like 4.5, 6 seconds at 160 in an 1/8 mile.
I mean, because at that point, do you think it's too dangerous to run a 1/4 mile with that much power?
No.
I mean, it has a parachute. That's the thing. Okay, that's one thing I forgot to tell you guys, or that I forgot to show. It has a parachute, so I mean, you know, it's serious business. So do you actually have to use that in the 8th?
In the 8th, on a good quarter-mile track, probably not. In the quarter mile, it became a necessity to have that parachute work. Either that or you're going to wear out a lot of brakes. I mean, this car started out around 165, then 170, then 175, then approaching 180. And the Cobra jets, which I also drove, we were well above 180 in those cars. And they're 3,600-pound cars, so the parachute was a necessity.
Yeah, especially because you're running skinny pizza cutter kind of tires.
Yeah, you don't have a whole lot. You don't have a lot of room to stop that much weight. So the parachute was a nice thing to have out there dragging behind you. But it's in the 8th mile. You probably wouldn't have to throw the chute, and since I don't have a lot of help, I probably won't unless I have to. Pack the chute between rounds is one more thing to do. But we're looking forward to getting it back out there and seeing if we can go fast again. And
let's look at the engine bay. Because I think there's a lot of interesting things for your class that you pointed out.
Well, remember, this is no longer a factory shootout car, so it's now an ultra street. So some things are legal and some things are illegal. One example is you can have a forward-facing air intake. On the factory shootout car, there was a big scoop that went right down to the grill and just rammed air up into the engine, which was fantastic. The guys at Mopar did such a fantastic job with that scoop. That alone was worth a ton. But in this class, right now, the rule is I can't have any kind of scoop that goes to the front. So I've got to come with some kind of air inlet system, but it can't go to the front and suck air out of the front.
Wait, so you could at least just put like a Venturi or something
just
right here?
and condition the air on the way in, and that helps a lot in the big rotor set. But I'm kind of fighting with two hands tied behind my back with this car. It's aerodynamically not a really beautiful car, and it's a beautiful car, but not aerodynamically. It's heavy, it's going to be heavy. And the only thing that will overcome all that is some great help, some great friends like BES Racing Engines who helped me design and develop these engines and really have a ton of history with these engines. In fact, the fastest X275 car in the country, the most badass Challenger in the world, is actually Rob Goss in X275, where he routinely runs 420s in the 8th mile. So this is, some technology from the factory shootout program, some technology from what they've learned in that X275 effort, all blended together. But the crowning jewel is this baby right here. This is a thing of beauty, this Whipple Supercharger, straight out of California, by the way. And Mr. Dustin Whipple and his team out there have developed a supercharger here that is just so much better than the predecessor. It's incredible.
So this is 3 liters.
The 3-liter supercharger is what they call a Gen 5 3-liter supercharger. And that supercharger is very similar to the one that's on these dominating Cobra jets, which they just keep trying to slow down by putting bigger and bigger pulleys on them to slow the supercharger down and let everybody else catch up, because that supercharger is so good. And that supercharger will be sitting on top of a 2021 drag pack pretty soon. So that's a cool supercharger. Between that and the wizards at BES and the chassis guy named Mike Roth and the cone suspension guys, we're going to put that team back together and see if we can't do some damage in this ultra street or extreme street class and make this thing go faster than it's ever gone. But it's going to be a good fun thing. I mean, I'm anxious to see how the 2021 drag pack program also runs, and I'm hopeful that Leah goes out there and just dominates again with the drag pack.
Okay, so forgive me, I'm kind of a dummy, like I said, with drag racing, but the 354, that's just how many cc's this motor came with.
Well, when these cars came from the factory, they had a 354 cubic inch supercharged engine in 2015. And there was 2 variants of it. There was a pickup truck engine, I like to call it. It had an iron block you could buy at a dealership. It was a pickup truck, literally block. It was pickup truck cylinder heads that had been CNC'd, and that engine made almost as much power when you put that scoop on it as this very specialized engine that it was, that later became. Thought to be needed to be competitive, but the Gen 3 Hemi is so good, it was actually pretty good with just that original 354. Both those engines were base cubic inches of 354 cubic inches. We could step it up for this extreme street class. We can run all the way up to 440 cubic inches, so that's a 426 cubic inch version. That's one of the ways we stepped it up to the much higher power.
Oh, so this actually isn't?
It's no longer a 354.
Okay, so you have to rebadge it.
Yeah, I thought that myself, and and since I'm wed to a beautiful, fantastic woman that can also do graphics, I'm sure that we'll have something on there besides that when we go race it. But it started out as the SR354 because, of course, the plane it's named after used to be called the SR71, so we called this one the SR354. So
the crazy thing about this car, while it's so fast, there's so many things still left in the interior. I mean,
including the power windows.
power windows still work?
Oh yeah. I'm not gonna run them down because there's a little issue with them getting up in the weather strip, but the power windows work. So it has to have a full interior with 2 seats in the factory showdown class. Now I'm allowed to take that seat out, but I'm kind of skeptical about whether I'm going to do it. It's not enough weight to make it worth it really, but you can have 1 seat in the class I'm going into, but in factory shootout you have to have 2 seats. You have to have the factory windows in it. The power windows work in the cars. I mean, they don't have air conditioning, but other than that, they're pretty much, interior-wise stock. But because they go so fast, you have to have this cage, which is called a funny car cage. You can see it kind of wraps around your head when you sit in that little cocoon in there. And this cage will protect you in the quarter mile to 750. And the Cobra Jets are knocking on the door of that limit at 750, and this new drag pack will run right with it, I'm sure. But they're probably going to notch them down a little bit so they stay in that slower than 750 zone, because you have to have even more of this kind of cage stuff to protect you if you go faster than that.
So it comes with this from the factory?
The 2021 will come with a cage that's equivalent to this. This car did not, because this is a 2015. In 2015, if you wanted to go this fast, you had to cut out all the factory stuff and put in your own cage, which this car is an unusual car. This was one of the first drag packs built. And in addition to that, it was the only drag pack in 2015 built that was painted any other color but white. I had them paint it this flat black color to do this SR71 theme, and it's the only black car.
Wow. So it's not a wrap then?
No, it's not. Well, the doors you're standing next to now are Kevlar, because to take some weight out for this class I'm going into, and they're wrapped, but the rest of the car is painted and was painted at the factory where they built these drag pack Challengers up in Detroit.
Tell me a little bit about the transmission.
The transmission is an aftermarket high-performance 3-speed transmission built around a design that used to be a Turbo 400, believe it or not, which is a GM transmission base design. There's nothing in it from General Motors anymore. It's all performance, high-performance aftermarket stuff, in this case built by Cohen Engineering, which do a lot of the gear sets and everything for everybody, but they also build their own transmissions. And it's got a Cohen transmission and a Cohen torque converter. And a big part of the magic is not only making that kind of horsepower, but you got to get down the track and get through 2 gear changes and keep it off the wall. These cars routinely hit walls. They hit walls because when you make the gear change, they light up those little 9-inch tires at 150 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour, and when those radials start to spin, they want to turn the car hard right or hard left. And there's been a lot of drivers that end up T-boning walls and finding out this class can really bite you. This car has actually been in the wall once itself.
Well, and because that's the thing is there's no traction control or anything. Your foot.
That's right.
Your right foot is a traction control.
In the factory shootout class, in the class I'm going into, I get some new rules and I get to play with some new electronic stuff. But in the class of factory shootout, where Leah runs and I ran this car originally, you have to shift manually. You can't. There's no automatic shifting. It's an automatic transmission. You don't have to use a clutch, but you have to shift it manually, and there are no traction control or throttle devices or anything like that allowed. No wheelie control, none of that. You have to do it all as a driver. In the class I'm going into, you're allowed some of those electronic aids to help you with that radial tire with much higher power, and you run 1/8 mile, so the speeds are a little more closer to 150, 160, and not 170, 180, 100 above. So. A little different. Still blasting down the 1/8 mile faster than I've ever gone in my life, so I'm looking forward to it.
But that thing is, with that, because you're so limited in terms of things that actually, aids, as you were saying, electronic aids, it actually relies so much on the driver more so. With drag racing, so much of it, of course, is equipment, but man, if you mess up, you could throw away your race so easily.
Oh yeah, and in this class, it's about getting them down the track on those little tires, and it's tough. It's especially tough if you have a small team where you don't have anybody up there looking at the track and helping you adjust things, and it's just a tough class. The class I'm going into, the tire's a little bit wider, but it's a little bit more like a street tire, less like a race tire, so it's kind of a trade-off. The tracks are usually prepped a little better, so there's some things. I can run a trans brake in this new class, which is what this button's in here for. Actually, in the future, I'll launch the car like this. In the old days, when I drove it in factory shootout, you had to launch it with your foot. You weren't allowed to use a button to launch the car.
This actually...
That releases, in this new class, that releases. That would be illegal in the old class.
And what's the mechanism here? I've never actually seen this before.
The reason that big long throw on it is to adjust how fast it releases. So you, depending on as a driver, you can make some adjustments in here, and that will slow or speed that down, because you're not allowed electronically to do that. Again, back when we ran them in the shootout, that's actually a brake pedal, and there's a switch on the brake pedal that launches the car when you let go of the brake.
So essentially, when you do race again, you're full throttle, full brake?
You put that in. No, you put that in there. You get into the starting line, and then as you're sitting in the starting line, you push this in, and then you stomp the throttle all the way to the floor. The engine electronically limits to maybe somewhere between 3,000 and 6,000 RPM, and then when you want to let go, you let go of that button, and it shoots down the track. It releases a brake in the transmission, and all the power shoots to the back.
So then you're launching with just one hand on the wheel?
You launch with one hand on the wheel, and then you have to make a shift very quickly. And I don't have an air shifter in this thing, so you have to put your both hands on the wheel, and you reach down here and shift. And I remember the first time Lee and I started driving together, she's like, do you leave both hands on the wheel and then shift, or do you just leave your hand on the shifter? I said, I don't know. I think she thought I was like trying not to tell her, so I'm like, I don't know. I've been doing it my whole life. So we'll put like a GoPro in there or something, and we can see how I do it, because I don't know how I do it. So we actually put a GoPro in there. We can see that I actually hold on the wheel and let go and shift, and I hold on the wheel and let go and shift.
You just kind of go into like this autopilot mode then.
I went down this drag strip for the first time. I was out here racing with my brother when I was 13 years old. We were at Beach Bend, Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I came down here when I was 13 years old and helped my brother race a car. And I went down that drag strip as a competitor when I was 16 years old. That was 41 years ago. So after 41 years of driving these things, yeah, it becomes kind of like riding a bike. You just sometimes don't remember exactly how you do it. You just do it. So.
Okay, so then my last question before I let you go. I think Ford just came out with electric Cobra.
Yes, they did. Right? They did. Yeah, it's awesome.
What do you think about that? Is that, I'm guessing that probably won't compete in the same.
No, down the road maybe, but they're trying to demonstrate the incredible possibilities with an electric powered car. And I know there's a lot of skeptics, and it doesn't make the same noise, although you got to watch one run. It makes a lot of noise because the tires make noise and the car makes noise, even though you don't hear an engine noise. And in fact, I've been really lucky and blessed to help work with Don Gartless in an electric dragster trying to go 200 miles an hour. And I got to go down and spend time with helping him on his electric dragster program. And there's just a ton of potential to create really low cost, really fast cars that are easy to maintain with electric cars and drag racing. Drag racing is especially tuned to that because the battery can discharge a ton of energy in a short period of time, and you only need it for just a short period of time. So someday, and it may be 20 years from now, probably like that, you'll see probably electric cars dominating drag racing, and these will be more like the Southeast Gasser guys showing up, putting on a show with these big loud, smoke burning things. But for, to show the world what's possible now, that Cobra Jet program was really cool. And that car ran at 820, which is pretty much like a factory Cobra Jet runs now, and demonstrated what was possible. But that's what it's doing now. But I really like that the people are coming back around to let's show the world what's possible with electric cars by making exciting electric cars, not boring electric cars that both do incredible things and are friendly in lots of ways. And so it's been a real cool thing to be able to help Gartless do that. Gartless is an innovator. He's 88 years old, jumping an electric dragster, going 200 miles an hour, and he's an innovator of the past, still working together to innovate in the future, Holly and Gartless together. It's so cool to be down there. It's a mind-blowing experience to be on the starting line at Gainesville and be leaning into the cockpit and telling Don Gartless how he ought to drive. That was like, I woke up when I got home and said, did that really happen? Did I really talk to Don Gartless and was telling him how to drive radial tires when they spin? It was crazy, but it was awesome.
Well, I guess my whole thing is having watched Volkswagen, smash the record at Pikes Peak, and just seeing electric racing kind of start up and get into the industry. As long as we're still racing, I'll be okay with it. As long as they're fun and they look good, and as long as we can still have these, then I'm okay with it. And you know, we don't need just a method of transportation. We need to still have fun. So that's very, very essential to me and all other car guys. But thank you so much, Geoff, for spending your time showing us this. Like I said, you know, this is me looking outside from a different world, just looking into your world. But I can still appreciate it so much because there's just so many things that I can relate to. And you love it so much. You know, I need to take a second look at it and you know, appreciate, I guess, just the whole mechanical aspect of it, and also just the form factor. It's just super cool.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this car. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to work with all the great people at Holley and people like yourself to tell the story about how you can go out and spend all your money, have a blast with cars, turn all that useless green paper into something valuable, fast cars.
I like that. And with that, I think that's a wrap.